A finger stabbed through the air at a man sitting in the front row. The wrestler was still inside the ring, chest heaving, veins running up his neck like cables under skin. His last opponent was being carried out on a stretcher. The crowd hadn't even finished screaming, and the wrestler was already pointing, not at another fighter, not at a coach, at a man in a dark suit sitting with his legs crossed and his hands folded in his lap like he was waiting for a bus. The man didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't blink. His name was Bruce, and he weighed 141 pounds. The wrestler pointing at him weighed 310. He had a neck thicker than Bruce's thigh, arms that looked like they had been made for pulling trees out of the ground, a chest so wide that when he stood in front of you, you couldn't see the turnbuckle behind him, and a record that didn't belong to a human being. 999 professional bouts. 999 wins. Not a single loss, not a draw, not a disqualification. In 31 years of competition across 4 countries, no man had ever put his back to the mat. 999 men had tried. 999 men had failed. And now, on the night he was going for 1,000, with 100,000 people packed into the arena and every seat taken and every aisle full, this man was pointing at Bruce. The crowd turned. Every head in the building moved at once. 100,000 faces found the small man in the front row, the man in the dark suit with the neat hair and the calm eyes, and the body that looked like it had been built for reading, not fighting. A woman 3 seats to his left pulled her child closer. A man behind him leaned forward, mouth open, trying to understand what was happening. The friend sitting next to Bruce, a stunt coordinator named Tommy, put his hand on Bruce's arm and whispered something. Probably don't. Probably we should go. Probably this isn't what we came here for. Bruce didn't look at Tommy. He was looking at the wrestler, not at his arms, not at his chest, not at the sweat dripping from his jaw. He was looking at his feet, the way they sat on the canvas, the way the left one carried more weight than the right, the way both knees pointed slightly outward. He was reading the man the way a mechanic reads an engine, finding the flaw before the hood is even open. The arena was screaming his name now, not Bruce's, the wrestler's. 100,000 people chanting for the man who had never lost. And Bruce uncrossed his legs. Stay with me on this one. It was a Friday, late October. The kind of night where the city hums a little louder than usual, because everybody knows something is happening somewhere, and nobody wants to be the one who missed it. The arena had been sold out for 11 days. Tickets on the street were going for 6 times their printed price. A man outside the main entrance was offering his watch and $40 for a single seat in the upper deck. Nobody took the deal. Bruce hadn't planned to be here. That morning he had been in his garage, shirtless, barefoot on the concrete floor. The wooden dummy stood in the corner the way it always stood, bolted to a steel frame he had welded himself. He had been working on the same combination for 40 minutes. Left trap, right palm, left elbow. A shift of the hips that was invisible unless you knew where to look. Over and over. The same 3 strikes, the same angle, the same breathing pattern. 40 minutes on 3 moves, because 3 moves done perfectly were worth more than 100 done almost right. Linda had come to the doorway with Brandon on her hip. The boy was 2. He had his father's eyes and his mother's patience. He watched Bruce hit the dummy with the kind of focus a 2-year-old gives to something he doesn't understand, but knows is important. Lunch is ready. Bruce stopped. He put his palm flat on the dummy's chest, the way you put a hand on a friend's shoulder. A pause. A thank you. A small ritual nobody taught him. He just did it. He wiped his hands on a towel. He kissed Brandon on the forehead. He sat at the kitchen table and ate what Linda had made. Rice, steamed vegetables, a small piece of fish, a glass of water. He ate the way he did everything, deliberately, without waste. Every movement had a reason, even the way he held his chopsticks. The phone rang at 3 in the afternoon. Tommy, the stunt coordinator. He had 2 tickets for a wrestling event that night. His wife couldn't go. He was calling Bruce because Bruce was the only person he knew who would watch a wrestling match, the way a surgeon watches an operation. Not for entertainment, for education. I've got front row seats, you'll want to see this guy. He's going for 1,000 wins tonight. Nobody's ever done it. Bruce looked at the clock on the kitchen wall, a small white clock with black hands. Linda had bought it at a hardware store the week they moved in. The second hand moved in a smooth circle. How big is he? Tommy laughed. Big enough that they had to reinforce the ring. Bruce was quiet for 3 seconds. Then he said one word. Fine. The drive to the arena took 40 minutes. Tommy talked the whole way. He talked about the wrestler the way men talk about natural disasters, with respect and a little bit of fear. He told Bruce things he had heard from people who had been close enough to see the damage. A man in Detroit who had both arms broken in the same hold. A challenger in Osaka who was carried out of the arena and didn't walk again for 11 months. A referee in Mexico City who made the mistake of stepping in too early and spent 3 weeks eating through a straw. Bruce listened. He didn't ask questions. He watched the road. The headlights made the lane markers glow. He drove with both hands on the wheel, 10 and 2, the way Linda had asked him to drive ever since Brandon was born. He had changed that habit for her. He would change small things for the people he loved. Never the big things. The big things were fixed. But the small ones, the way he drove, the way he answered the phone, the way he made sure there was always tea in the pot before she woke up, those were hers. They parked 3 blocks away. They walked. Tommy was still talking. Bruce was looking at the arena as it came into view, a concrete rectangle lit up against the night sky like a furnace. You could hear the crowd from the street. Not words, just sound. The sound of 100,000 people compressed into a space designed for 60,000. The overflow was standing in the aisles, leaning against walls, sitting on steps. They showed their tickets at the gate. The man at the turnstile looked at Bruce for a second too long. Not recognition. Assessment. A small Chinese man in a dark suit at a wrestling event. He almost said something. He didn't. Inside, the noise was physical. It hit you in the chest the way a wave hits you at the beach when you're not braced for it. The air was thick, hot. It smelled like beer and sweat and popcorn and something metallic underneath all of it. Adrenaline, maybe, or blood. They found their seats, front row, dead center. Bruce sat down the way he sat down everywhere. Spine straight, both feet flat on the ground, his jacket buttoned, his hands in his lap. He looked at the ring 10 feet away and studied it the way he studied everything. The tension of the ropes, the height of the posts, the gap between the bottom rope and the apron, the distance from the ring to the barricade, the distance from the barricade to his chair. Tommy handed him a beer. Bruce took it. He didn't open it. He set it on the concrete beside his foot and forgot about it the way you forget about something that was never important to begin with. The lights dimmed. The first match was starting. Bruce watched. He watched everything. There were 4 matches before the main event. Bruce watched each one the way a language professor watches a foreign film. Not for the story, for the grammar. He watched how the wrestlers planted their feet before a throw. He watched how they distributed weight during a hold. He watched the moments between moves, the half seconds when a body is in transition and belongs to nobody. Not the attacker, not the defender. Just physics. In the second match, a wrestler caught his opponent in a headlock and drove him into the canvas. The crowd erupted. Tommy slapped his knee and said something about technique. Bruce said nothing. He had seen the headlock coming 4 seconds before it happened. He had seen the setup, the slight lean, the shift of the hip, the way the man's right hand opened a 1/4 inch before it closed around the neck. 4 seconds. In Bruce's world, 4 seconds was enough time to end a fight, make tea, and sit back down. The third match ended when a man's shoulder came apart. The sound reached the front row, a wet, grinding pop that didn't belong inside a human body. The man screamed. The referee waved his arms. Medical staff ran in from both sides. Bruce watched the injured man being carried out. He watched the way the stretcher bearers held him. He watched the angle of the damaged arm. Then he looked down at his own hands in his lap and moved his right thumb across his left palm. Slowly, mapping something, a nerve, a tendon, a line between what holds a body together and what takes it apart. Tommy was on his 3rd beer. His face was red. He was having the time of his life. He kept leaning over to Bruce and narrating. That guy's got no footwork. Watch his left side. It's wide open. You see that? You see what he did there? Bruce nodded at each observation. Polite, patient. The way a man nods when a child explains how airplanes fly. Then the lights went out. The arena dropped into blackness so complete you couldn't see your own hand. 100,000 people pulled in a single breath. The darkness lasted 3 seconds. Then a single red spotlight hit the entrance ramp. Smoke rolled out from underneath the curtain. A drumbeat started. Deep. So deep it vibrated in the concrete under their feet. The rhythm was slow, 1 beat per second, like a heart, like something ancient waking up. And from behind the curtain, a shape appeared that did not look like a man. It looked like a wall that was moving, a wall that had arms and a jaw and eyes that caught the red light and held it the way an animal's eyes hold light in the dark. The champion had arrived, and he was bigger than Tommy had described. Much bigger. The champion's name was being chanted by 100,000 mouths, but it sounded like one voice. One deep, rolling, endless voice that shook the walls and rattled the lights above the ring. He walked down the ramp the way gravity walks. Inevitable. Unhurried. Every step landed like it was punishing the ground for being in the way. He entered the ring. The ropes bent when he stepped through them. The canvas groaned under his weight. He stood in the center and raised both fists, and the arena became something that wasn't an arena anymore. It was a temple, and he was the god inside it. The challenger was already in the ring, a good fighter. 36 wins, thick arms, a jaw built for taking punishment. He had trained for this night for 7 months. He had watched tape. He had studied patterns. He had told a reporter that morning that he had found something in the champion's footwork, a gap, a flaw, something nobody else had seen. He was wrong. The bell rang. The challenger moved first. He was fast. He shot low, grabbed the champion's waist with both arms, and for 1/2 of 1 second, the crowd went silent, because something impossible was happening. The challenger had the champion's hips. He was driving forward. He was pushing the biggest man in the sport backward. Then the champion's hands came down, not fast, patient. He broke the grip the way you break a wishbone, one side, then the other. He turned the challenger sideways with a motion that looked like a suggestion rather than a force. Then he placed him on the canvas. Then he pressed a forearm across his chest. The forearm was the size of a fence post, the referee counted. 1, 2, 3, 91 seconds. That's how long the fight lasted. 1,000 wins, 1,000 losses. The number appeared on the scoreboard above the ring in white lights that buzzed and flickered. Confetti dropped from the rafters. The champion stood with his arms raised and his head back and his mouth open, not smiling, absorbing, taking it in the way a man takes in air after being underwater too long. Bruce hadn't moved through the entire match, through the 91 seconds that ended a 7-month training camp, through the confetti and the counting and the screaming. Bruce had sat perfectly still, his hands in his lap, his eyes on the ring, his breathing unchanged. Tommy was on his feet screaming with everybody else. He looked down at Bruce and laughed. "You're not even excited? 1,000 wins? That doesn't do anything for you?" Bruce didn't answer Tommy, because Bruce was no longer watching the celebration. He was watching the champion's face. And on that face, behind the raised fists and the open mouth, Bruce saw something that nobody else in that arena saw. He saw hunger. The man had won 1,000 fights and he was still hungry. That's when the champion looked down at Bruce. The champion leaned over the ropes and pointed. One finger, straight at Bruce. The microphone was still clipped to the ring post, and the champion grabbed it without looking. He didn't need to look. He had done this before. Not 1,000 times, but enough. I know who you are. I've seen your little shows on television, your little kicks, your little tricks. Stand up, come in here. Show these people something real. The words came through the speakers and hit every wall in the building. 100,000 people heard them, and 100,000 people turned to look at the man in the front row. Bruce sat still. Now, here's what nobody in that arena understood. The champion wasn't doing this because he was angry. He wasn't doing this because he was drunk on victory. He was doing this because he was smart. He had just won his 1,000th fight. Tomorrow, every newspaper would carry the story. But 1,001. 1,001 against a man whose name was starting to appear in magazines and on late-night television, a man people whispered about in dojos and gyms across the country. That wasn't just a win, that was a legacy. The champion wanted Bruce in that ring because beating Bruce would make the 1,000 wins disappear behind something bigger. Bruce understood this. He understood it the way he understood the distance between the ropes and the floor and the angle of the champion's knees. Instantly, completely, without emotion. Tommy grabbed Bruce's arm. Don't. This isn't a street. This is his ring, his rules, his referee. You've got nothing to prove to anybody in here. Bruce looked at Tommy for the first time since they sat down. He looked at him the way a man looks at a friend who is right about every single thing he just said, and wrong about the one thing that matters. He uncrossed his legs. He placed the unopened beer on the floor. He stood up. I'm going to pause here. If you're still with me, hit that subscribe button. This channel is about men who were never supposed to win. Men the world looked at and measured with a tape and a scale and decided were not enough. And what happens when those men stand up anyway? Subscribe. Because what happened in the next 60 seconds changed the way 100,000 people understood the word power. Bruce placed one hand on the steel barricade. He swung both legs over it in a single motion and landed on the arena floor without sound. The crowd noise dropped. Not to silence, to confusion. 100,000 people trying to understand what they were watching. A man in a suit, 141 pounds, walking toward a ring that held a 310-pound champion who had never lost. And then someone in the crowd recognized him and said his full name out loud. Bruce Lee. The name moved through the arena the way a match moves through gasoline, row by row, section by section. You could track it by the way heads turned and mouths opened and hands grabbed the arms of the person sitting next to them. Bruce Lee, Bruce Lee, Bruce Lee is here. Bruce Lee is walking toward the ring. Bruce Lee is going to fight him. The champion heard the name. His grin didn't disappear, but it shifted. The way a door shifts when the foundation underneath it settles, still hanging, but not quite level anymore. He watched Bruce walk toward the ring, and for the first time in 1,000 fights, the champion did something he had never done before. He took a step backward. One step. Small. Almost invisible. His back foot slid 3 inches across the canvas. Nobody saw it. Nobody except Bruce. And Bruce filed it away the way a locksmith files away the shape of a key. For later, when the door needs to open. Bruce reached the ring. He didn't take the stairs. He placed both palms flat on the apron, pushed down, and lifted his entire body onto the ring edge in one motion. No effort, no strain, the way water moves over a stone. He stepped through the ropes. His shoes touched the canvas. He stood still. The champion was 12 feet away. Between them was nothing. No referee in position. No rules agreed upon. No bell waiting to ring. Just 2 men. One who had never lost, and one who weighed less than the other man's left leg. The champion spoke into the microphone, so the little man from the movies wants to play. Bruce didn't respond. He was unbuttoning his jacket. He folded it once, placed it on the nearest turnbuckle. Then the cuffs. Left sleeve rolled twice, right sleeve rolled twice. Precise, symmetrical. Then he turned his body sideways. Left foot forward, right foot back. Both hands open at his sides. Fingers loose, relaxed. The stance looked like nothing, like a man waiting for a taxi. But every fighter in that arena who knew what they were looking at felt a cold wire tighten at the base of their spine. The champion dropped the microphone. It hit the canvas with a thud that echoed through the speakers. He crouched into his wrestling stance. Low, wide, hands out. He was done talking. His eyes had changed. The showmanship was gone. What was left was the thing underneath. The thing that had ended 999 men. Pure, mechanical, predatory focus. He moved first. 310 pounds of muscle and bone launched across 12 feet of canvas, like something that had been fired from a cannon. His right hand reached for Bruce's neck. His left hand reached for Bruce's waist. A double grip takedown that had broken 17 men's ribs and put 4 men in the hospital. Bruce didn't move. Not yet. The champion's hands were 6 inches from Bruce's body when Bruce moved. Not backward, not sideways. Forward, 1 inch forward, into the attack. His left hand came up from his hip and touched the inside of the champion's right wrist. Touched, not grabbed, not slapped. A touch so light it looked like a greeting. The champion's right hand, the hand that had broken 17 sets of ribs, sailed past Bruce's head and closed on empty air. His left hand still reached for Bruce's waist. Bruce's right palm met it at the wrist. A quarter turn, the same way you turn a doorknob. The champion's own momentum carried him forward and down. 310 pounds of undefeated muscle folded at the waist and hit the canvas on one knee. The sound was the sound of a tree beginning to fall. The arena went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The difference between 100,000 people choosing not to speak and 100,000 people forgetting how to. The champion pushed himself up, fast, angry. He spun toward Bruce and threw a right hand. A real one, not a wrestling move. A punch, the kind of punch that comes from a place deeper than strategy. From the place where shame lives. Bruce tilted his head 1/2 inch to the left. The fist went past his ear. He felt the wind of it move his hair. The champion's fist kept going and his body followed it, and for 1 full second, the greatest wrestler alive had his back to Bruce Lee. 1 second. Bruce could have ended it 7 different ways in that second. He chose the 8th. He chose to wait. The champion turned around. He was breathing hard now. His face was red. His eyes were different. The predator was gone. What was left was something older, something that lived in the back of every man's brain, the part that knows when it has met something it cannot beat. He charged again, low, both arms wide, a takedown meant to crush. Bruce sidestepped. 1 step. His right hand pressed against the champion's shoulder as he passed. Not a strike. Pressure. Specific pressure on a specific point. The champion's legs stopped working. He went down on both knees and then forward onto his hands, on all fours on the canvas, the arena gasping as one voice. Bruce stepped back. He straightened his sleeves, left then right. He walked to the turnbuckle. He picked up his jacket. He unfolded it and put it on. He buttoned it. He stepped through the ropes and dropped to the arena floor. He walked back to his seat. He sat down. He crossed his legs. He picked up the beer from the floor and held it on his knee. Tommy was staring at him, mouth open. No words. The champion was still on all fours in the ring. His corner men were running toward him. The crowd had not made a sound. 12 seconds. The whole thing had taken 12 seconds, and Linda's husband was going to be home before midnight, just like he promised.